As the ballot count from Turkey's national election neared completion Sunday, support for President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's re-election fell below the majority needed. This for him to win re-election outright. Turkey will proceed toward a presidential runoff on May 28. Yes, it means that none of the candidates have received a majority of the votes in the first round of voting. Erdogan received 49.6% of the vote, according to unofficial results, the state-run Anadolu Agency reported after nearly 97% of the ballot boxes had been counted. As the night May 15, 2023 wore on, the lead he held over opposition leader Kemal Kilicdaroglu, who was his major rival, was down to 44.7%. In the meantime, according to the pro-opposition Anka news agency, Erdogan had 49% of the vote against Kilicdaroglu's 45%. This after virtually all of the ballots had been counted. Officials stated that a rerun election was not guaranteed, and that the results still needed to be tallied from about Turkish people who voted from abroad. Erdogan, 69, has ruled Turkey for 20 years as either the president or the prime minister. Prior to the election, polls had shown that the increasingly authoritarian leader was just behind his opponent. When Anadolu insisted at one point that the 74-year-old finance official was just barely ahead, the opposition candidate's party accused Anadolu of tampering with the results. The election appeared to be setting up to be the toughest re-election campaign of the Turkish leader's 20-year rule. All with the campaign focusing primarily on domestic concerns like the economy, civil rights, and a February earthquake that killed more than 50,000 people. Members of Kilicdaroglu's center-left, pro-secular Republican People's Party, or CHP, claimed the government-run news agency was biased against Erdogan despite the partial results showing otherwise. Ömer Çelik, a spokesman for Erdogan's Justice and Development (AK) party, accused the opposition of making an attempt to assassinate the national will. Also, asserted that the results were being manipulated by the state news agency. He labeled the charges irresponsible. While Erdogan hoped to win a 5-year term that would take him well into his third decade as Turkey's leader, Kilicdaroglu, 74, campaigned on a promise. This to return the country to a more democratic path and to repair its economy, battered by high inflation and currency devaluation. The 600-seat Turkish parliament was also re-elected by voters. According to Anadolu, with 98% of the ballots counted, Erdogan's coalition of ruling parties had slightly more than 50% of the vote. And while Kilicdaroglu's Nation Alliance had about 35%. Voting was open to almost 64 million individuals. Turkey became a republic and a modern, secular state on the ruins of the Ottoman Empire 100 years ago this year. Turkey has a history of high voter turnout, but since a failed coup attempt in 2016, the government has curtailed the rights to free speech and assembly. Erdogan launched a massive assault on state personnel with claimed ties to Fethullah Gulen and pro-Kurdish politicians after attributing the failed coup to the followers of the cleric and erstwhile ally. The elections were viewed as a test of a united opposition's capacity to unseat a leader who has attempted to increase his influence on the international arena, all the while consolidating practically all state authority in his hands. Erdogan assisted in mediating a deal between Ukraine and Russia that permitted Ukrainian grain to travel from Black Sea ports to the rest of the world despite Russia's conflict in Ukraine. The deal, which is carried out by an Istanbul-based center, is due to expire soon, so Turkey sponsored negotiations last week to extend it. Erdogan, meanwhile, has also stalled Sweden's attempt to join NATO while demanding concessions, claiming that country was too lenient against supporters of the cleric. All with a base in the United States and members of pro-Kurdish groups that Turkey views as dangers to national security. The president's harsh leadership style, according to detractors, is to blame for the excruciating cost of living crisis. According to the most recent official statistics, Inflation is currently at 44%, down from a peak of 86%. The opposition adopted the onion as a campaign emblem to raise awareness of the price of vegetables. Erdogan claims that high interest rates cause inflation, which is contrary to conventional wisdom. Yes, and he has repeatedly pressed the Central Bank of the Republic of Turkey to decrease its key rate. Erdogan's administration came under fire for reportedly responding to the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that damaged 11 southern regions inadequately. The number of fatalities and suffering is claimed to have increased due to lax enforcement of construction codes. Erdogan tried to win over voters during his election campaign by utilizing resources provided by the government, and his sway over the media. He said that the opposition supported LGBTQ+ rights, which he claimed threatened traditional family values. This in the largely Muslim country, and that they were drunkards, conspiring with terrorists, and terrorists. He promoted domestic Turkish defense and infrastructure projects while raising wages and pensions, and subsidizing electricity and gas prices in an effort to win support. If it were to win both the presidential and parliamentary elections, Kilicdaroglu's Nation Alliance made a promise. It was to convert Turkey's political system back to a parliamentary democracy. Additionally, it pledged to halt restrictions on free expression and other instances of democratic regress in Turkey, and as well as to reinstate the independence of the judiciary and the central bank. Democracy has been sorely missed by all of us. After casting his ballot at an Ankara school, Kilicdaroglu said, "We all missed being together." Sinan Ogun, a former academic who is supported by an anti-immigrant nationalist party, is another candidate for president. It was anticipated that his campaign would draw supporters away from the two leading contenders. Many voters at polling places struggled to fold large ballot papers, of which contained 24 political parties vying for seats in parliaments. Yes, and put them into envelopes with the presidential ballot. Nearly 9 million people were able to cast ballots in the 11 provinces that were affected by the earthquake. Only 133,000 people registered to vote in their new provinces after 3 million people fled the earthquake zone. In Diyarbakir, a Kurdish majority city that was hit by the earthquake, Ramazan K arrived early at his polling station to cast his vote. "God willing, it will be a democratic election," he said. "May it be beneficial in the name of our country." In Turkey, the presidential election requires a candidate to receive at least 50% plus one of the votes to be declared the winner in the first round. If no candidate receives this threshold, a runoff election is held between the two candidates who received the highest number of votes in the first round. This second round of voting is usually held 2 weeks after the first round. In the runoff election, the two candidates will compete head-to-head to try and secure a majority of the votes. The candidate who receives the highest number of votes in the runoff election will be declared the winner and will become the new president of Turkey. It is important to note that a runoff election is a crucial moment in the electoral process. Yes, it provides an opportunity for voters to choose between the two leading candidates and decide who they believe is the best person to lead the country. Overall, a runoff election is a democratic process that allows for fair and transparent elections and ensures that the winning candidate has the support of the majority of the voters.